Welcome back to the Canadian Concussion Center's webinar series, which is sponsored by LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America. I'm Leslie Rattan, and I'm really pleased to continue moderating our series, which was developed for people that have experienced concussions, their family, as well as healthcare providers. If you've been with us before, you'll know that our sessions focus on all different aspects of concussion, where we have an expert speaker that speaks for about half of the session, and then we open it up to questions from those of you in the audience. And the sessions are recurring every other Tuesday evening. I'd like to, first off, begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the land that we are on today. Even as we meet virtually, it's important to recognize the lands that we all call home and reaffirm our commitment to improving relationships and understanding the local indigenous peoples. From coast to coast, we honor the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. So I have a couple of extra announcements for this evening. So it's kind of fitting that we're running a session this week because it's actually National Concussion Awareness Week. And tomorrow, September the 25th, is Rowan's Law Day. And for those of you that don't know, this day was established to honor the memory of Rowan Stringer, who was a 17-year-old athlete, who died on Mother's Day in 2013 after suffering multiple concussions within a week playing high school rugby in Ottawa. Her untimely death prompted a coroner's inquest, which created 49 recommendations for enhanced concussion awareness and treatment. And so the purpose of Rowan's Law Day is really to raise awareness about concussion and promote concussion safety in sport. So it's also very fitting that we have Dr. Charles Tator with us tonight, who's going to be speaking, who has been a real leader and champion of prevention of concussions. So just for this evening session, if you haven't been with us before, if you do have a question, if you just look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A icon. So that's where, if you have a question for Dr. Tator, please enter it there. If you're having any technical difficulties, just enter whatever is going on in the chat, and Christian can help you out. So as we always do, I'm just going to get Christian to put up a short poll. We always like to just get a sense of who is in the audience. So I'll just give you a second to complete that. And there we go. Okay. So for this evening's session, I'm really pleased to welcome back Dr. Charles Tator, who's going to be presenting a new segment in our series, which is the treatment of post-concussion symptoms related to screens at work, school, and play. Dr. Tator is the director of the Canadian Concussion Centre. He trained in neurosurgery and neuropathology and was chair of neurosurgery at the University of Toronto. He was chief of neurosurgery at the Toronto Western Hospital and was a founder of Think First Canada, a national brain and spinal cord injury prevention foundation, and Parachute Canada, a national injury prevention agency. He held 2 research chairs at the University of Toronto and is an officer of the Order of Canada and an inductee of the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame and the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. Currently, he is a scientist in the Krembil Brain Institute and director of the Canadian Concussion Centre at Toronto Western Hospital. His book on catastrophic injuries in sports and recreation was published by the University of Toronto Press, and his practice primer on concussions appeared in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. He's also the author of 437 publications in peer-reviewed journals. He's a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Neurotrauma and the Neuroscientist, and is an associate editor of the Journal of Concussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tator.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie. It's so lovely to appear with you on this new segment of our LIUNA webinar series. I just put up on this slide the functions of our center are really patient care. We really want to help people with concussion, research into concussion, especially the treatment of concussion, and also teaching. So we really like to teach concussed people and practitioners about how to improve recovery and concussion. And as Leslie said, this is the first time we've covered this topic because previously we didn't really know enough about it to give a seminar on it. But it's really quite amazing how many people with concussions do suffer from one or more of, of the following visual symptoms. And I've put them up, and this is just really a partial list. So, eye strain, some people have double vision, blurred vision, photophobia, which means real fear of light because light hurts. It's also called sensitivity to light or photosensitivity. And then this new symptom called computer screen intolerance. So, as you can see, there are a lot of different symptoms that result from concussion. And what is computer screen intolerance? It's a newly coined term. Some people call it cyber sensitivity or digital eye strain, and there are even other names for this newly discovered symptom. Uh, and it does affect use of screens, whether it's computers, cell phones, or TV screens, and a whole bunch of symptoms can occur, which we will have on the next slide. So, light can trigger a lot of different symptoms. Light can even uh, trigger a migraine attack. And there are quite a few similarities between migraine headaches and post concussion headaches, as our seminar on headaches will reveal. Um, Light can also trigger dizziness, nausea, discomfort, even pain in the eyes, anxiety, even panic attacks can be triggered by light. And then finally, even sleep disturbance can be triggered. So, light itself can be very difficult for a person with uh, concussion. I took this slide from one of the advertisements on the internet done by a company called TheraSpecs, and they surveyed people with sensitivity to light. Not all of these people had concussion, but many of them did have concussion. And people in my office always tell me that when they go into a store, especially, they can sometimes feel nausea, headaches, a bit of panic because of so many different visual stimuli. Like just imagine how many different colors, sizes, printing you see just going down the aisle of a food store. It can impact time you have with friends or family activities. And then work can be significantly affected by this light sensitivity. And then using a computer, smartphone, or tablet, watching TV or a movie, or outdoor activities, including sports, can all be affected by light. And if you might ask yourself, well, what type of lights cause symptoms? And we do see these symptoms more often with fluorescent lights. It's fluorescent seems to be one of the worst tolerated lights, so it's at the top. Flashing lights, flickering lights, bright lights, computer screens, phone screens, TV screens, and e readers at the bottom. E readers seem to be the least productive of symptoms. And daylight, just to give you some data about light in general, daylight contains a full spectrum of colors. In other words, you can see all the colors of the rainbow when there is daylight. So the actual daylight includes red wavelengths, orange, yellow, green, blue. Blue tends to be the shortest wavelength. And it is interesting that blue light seems to cause the most symptoms. You know, that royal blue type of Microsoft blue, that seems to be the most difficult symptom to difficult color to tolerate when you've had a concussion. And fluorescent light also is right at the top of the list of aggravating lights. And it may be more than just the fluorescent, but the fact that it often flickers more than a regular incandescent bulb, which is much better tolerated than fluorescent light. But unfortunately, school settings, office settings are full of fluorescent lights. Brighter light causes more symptoms, and dim light, glaring light causes symptoms. But some people with concussion are even sensitive to low levels of light. So it's not just the brightness that's a bother. One of the first studies that we did, so this was a research study on uh, the symptom of computer screen intolerance. We were the first to coin this symptom in our work in 2018. And we found that in this particular study, you can see we compared two screens. On the right side is a regular computer screen. So this is a regular LCD screen, liquid crystal display with a computer. And this is the e-reader type screen, a non-flickering screen that we tested. And in fact, this non-flickering screen was much better tolerated by people. So there's something about a computer screen and a regular computer that really turns on symptoms. So we've covered that. We'll just go ahead to the next slide. So our research in treating this problem showed that that the screen I just showed you, this small screen, was better tolerated by patients, and it is available commercially still. It's sold by Iris Technologies, but unfortunately, it doesn't include any color, so it's black and white only. It would not scroll like a regular computer screen. It was a small screen, as you saw on that slide, and it was quite costly. It cost about $1,500 for that small screen. Our most recent research was the subject of a thesis by one of our students, Chloe Busso, at our center. And a lot of the slides I'm showing were part of her thesis, and she did obtain her master's degree on this study of how does a computer screen cause symptoms and what can we do about it. So once again, we did research into this problem and found quite a few interesting findings. So what is a concussion? Just showing here, you can get a concussion from motor vehicle crashes, from intimate partner violence, from sports and recreation, etc. And the symptoms of concussion include lots of visual symptoms. For example, blurred vision, double vision, light sensitivity, as we said, and photophobia. This slide was created by Chloe Busso, and you can see this diagram showing someone very upset in front of a computer because they have computer screen intolerance and the number of symptoms that it can bring out. And we looked at what might be the potential mechanisms for this. Like, why is the eye and the brain so sensitive to light, and how does it happen? And we wondered, is it something actually in the eyeball? And there's some information that there are certain cells in the retina of the eyeball, because the eyeball, in fact, is an outgrowth of the brain itself. And some of these cells are attached directly to the center in the brain here called the thalamus. And we know that pain is a very major feature of the thalamus, that it's the way station in the brain for processing pain. And the fact that some of these cells in the retina are directly attached to this pain sensitive area of the thalamus is of major interest to us. And this is one of the mechanisms that we are pursuing in our research. And many of you may have participated already in one or more of our research studies, for which we are grateful to you for participating. And another potential mechanism, in fact, this is one that we're going to pursue this fall. And the question is, does the flickering light, for example, we know that fluorescent lights flicker, and people with concussion are especially susceptible to those flickering lights. And unfortunately, as we said, it's probably the most popular light in classrooms and in workspaces. So the question is, does the brain after a concussion have trouble fusing those flickering lights? In other words, making them into one. And it makes the brain sort of very busy and angry when it sees those flickering lights. And there are ways of studying this, which we are aware of, but it's never really been done in a concussed group of patients. So this is one of the studies that we are looking for volunteers for, and we will let you know when we're ready to ask you to come and do this test to see if flickering of light is the answer to why computer screens cause so much aggravation. So this is a study that we just finished. Manufacturers of screens are now able to make what's called a flicker-free screen. The vast majority of screens do flicker because they run on the traditional alternating current. But a flicker-free screen requires direct current so that it won't flicker. So we decided to compare these two screens, which are available. If you go to Best Buy, you can buy these screens. So what makes a screen flicker? Well, it turns out that it is the alternating current that makes it flicker. But if you make it with a DC current, it won't flicker, as shown on the right side of your screen. So it's a continuous light that doesn't flicker. And these two screens look identical from the outside, like you would not know which screen you're on. So they do look identical. They will scroll. They both have color. So they don't have the disadvantages of the previous e-reader type screen. We did actually test a flicker-free screen on 47 people with concussions, and here's who they were. They were 34 females, 13 males, average age 39, etc. So this was a population of concussed patients who helped us do this study on whether one screen is better than the other. And you can see that some of them had not returned to work, even though they were sometimes a year from the time of their concussion. People in a lot of different occupations and students, etc. So a whole variety of people who end up with computer screen intolerance came forward for this study, and we did find that they had significant discomfort from computer screens. Many of them had to be on screens for several hours a day. And we found that they did, in fact, become, very aggravated by having to be on a screen. And these, other features of the symptoms of those patients, and you may recognize yourself there that, you know, the computer screen was the worst and TV screens were less of a problem. So that is of interest to us that the regular TV screen was less bothersome than a computer screen. And I think we can skip over that one. So these are just other symptoms that those patients were experiencing, and we had all the patients test both screens in a randomized fashion, and we gave them a reading task, and we gave them a video to look at, and then tried to see if one was more aggravating than the other. And we haven't really tallied the results yet, so I can't give you the final results of that study. But it was helpful to us, and we did learn quite a bit about computer screen intolerance and what to recommend to people. So here's our current menu for treating the vision problems after a concussion. So we do think that you should get advice from your family doctor. You may need referral to an ophthalmologist, for example, to make sure it is not something like glaucoma that's causing trouble in your eyes. Like, make sure you don't have some other treatable eye condition and that it really is the concussion that's bothering you. And then, if you wear glasses, you should go back to your optometrist after a concussion, because we do have several examples of people whose corrected lenses need further changes after a concussion, that it can change what type of glass is going to be for you. And then if you don't get answers to those questions, then you may need to see somebody who knows more about concussion specifically, and we'll call that person, let's say, a concussion doctor, who would help figure out what the problem is. And I love looking at this slide, because this is what we want to prevent. We want to prevent people having to go to 20 different types of services and specialists after a concussion. And this was one of our colleagues in Copenhagen who runs a concussion center, showing the meandering course that some people are forced to take. But obviously, in the last few years, we've done a lot to try to prevent that from happening. So if your vision is what we call computer screen intolerance, there is a lot that you can do. We are really much better off now than, let's say, 8 or 10 years ago, because a lot has been learned in that period of time. And a lot is dependent on what we call accommodations. And we are used to recommending accommodations for people who are concussed. So tell the boss or teacher, if it's school that you can't get back to, or if it's work, that you may need to, have additional modifications or accommodations of your workplace. And as we will cover in one of the sessions later on in the year, and as we've covered in the past, we often recommend an occupational therapist for someone needing to get back to a work environment, especially how the work environment can be modified to suit your symptoms. And avoiding fluorescent lights, I think, is important. Even changing the type of fluorescent light. A lot of people don't know that fluorescent lights come in different light emitting methods, and some of them are quite bright, and some of them are less bright and are yellowish, and those are probably the ones that are better tolerated. If you wear glasses, then blue light filtering glasses. As I mentioned before, blue is the most aggravating color after a concussion, and it may be because of those special cells in the retina that are specifically sensitive to blue light. And as you know, they're connected now to the pain center in the brain. So just getting blue light filtering glasses may be for you. Sunglasses are excellent. They really do soften light, but they should be orangey brown in color. If they're gray, if they're blue sunglasses, or green sunglasses, they don't work as well as orangey brown. And the best shape is the Elton John, what I call the Elton John look. It makes you look like a bug because it also blocks the ambient light that comes, let's say, from the ceiling. It's not only blocking the light that you see directly in front of you from the computer. And then you can adjust your computer through the computer settings. You can change the brightness. And all modern computers have a brightness control. So turn down the brightness. That may solve your problem. Change the color, as we mentioned. Certain colors are more aggravating. So F dot luck. So if you remember um, that uh, formula, F dot lux, you can reprogram your computer to change the light through that program, which is free and readily available. So those are measures, easier measures that you can do. Of course, reduce computer time, take frequent breaks. Sometimes people can only take 20 minutes on a computer, but if they give themselves a 5 or 10 minute rest in between, they can go back to it. I've mentioned the fact that the e-reader type screen that Iris Technologies cells has helped people. This study ended about 7 years ago or so, and yet I still see people who are using that screen because they find it less aggravating than the regular screen. And if you want to try one of these flicker-free screens that runs on DC current and does not flicker, you can go to your favorite computer shop and get a screen. Either the number of companies that are now selling flicker-free screens, and try it out. Don't buy it until you try it out. They're not that expensive. They're pretty well the same expense as a flicker screen nowadays. So you can try out one of these screens and see if it works for you. So I've given you quite a few tips to try. Things that you shouldn't do. You shouldn't just tough it out and hope it'll go away. Unfortunately, vision therapy, as it's currently recommended, does not work for this symptom, computer screen intolerance. It's not effective. Don't just stay at home, and don't, you know, not return to work, because you can ask for accommodations in your work environment that will help with your computer screen intolerance. So, as Leslie already told you, this is a special week for concussion, because this is Concussion Awareness Week in Canada. It's quite amazing to me how far we've come in recognizing the importance of concussion, because in fact, 1% of Canadians concuss every year. Isn't that incredible? So each year there are 400,000 concussions in our country. And so it's fitting that we do have Concussion Awareness Week. And it's not just for sports and recreation, although that's what started it all off. And of course, as Leslie already said, Rowan's Law Day in Ontario is actually tomorrow. And certainly these are indications and evidence that concussion is an important issue in our country. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Tatter. That was excellent. Before I forget, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. We had last time someone was asking about the slides. So for any of our talks, that you can find them all on the Canadian Concussion Center's website. So they're all archived, they're all recorded, and you can also access a copy of the slides that should be posted sort of right there alongside the video, so you can actually access that. Another thing, this is a bit of an aside, but it just, when Dr. Tatter was talking about return to work, in the event that anyone out there is in the process of trying to return to work, the Ontario Brain Injury Association is actually running they've started a program, so it's free, but they actually work with you, the person that's had the concussion, as well as your employer. And so you can go to the Ontario Brain Injury Association. If you just Google OBIA and return to work, you should get it. But they're actually recruiting participants because it's a time limited in terms of their funding. So just in case anyone is interested in that. Um, okay, I think that's it. So there are a number of questions. Um, okay, and I've got them in both the chat and the Q&A. So I'm going to start with the Q&A. If I'm using amber filter eyeglasses, would a computer blue light screen be additionally helpful?
Um, yes, I think you should try that. In other words, if you use f.lux, which gets rid of a lot of the blue light in the actual screen images that you're seeing, the blue light filtering glasses will help as well. I would try them both. I would try blue light filtering glasses plus changing the screen away from blue light to one of the other colors. Yes. So I think you could double those up.
Okay,
There's a lot of trial and error in this. So it's fine to try, sure.
okay,
In
great.
fact, we've never, we've probably seen 2,000 patients at our center in the last 10 or 15 years, and I don't think we've ever seen two that have the same symptom complex. Yeah, so it's very individual condition.
And then we've got a couple of people just wondering about how do people find out about the studies that are being run? Like how would someone, are they posted somewhere, or can we announce them when you're recruiting here?
That's an excellent question. There isn't a good way yet to let people know that a study is underway and that we're recruiting people. The Canadian Concussion Network, to which we belong, is another manifestation of the importance of concussion in our country. That there is now a network, and I'm part of it. So I'm going to bring that up as a very good suggestion that for studies that are going on to let people know through that website. They do have a website, but we haven't been using it for that purpose. But that's a great idea. Thank you for that idea.
Great, excellent. Okay. Um,
We will, but for our study, I think we could even post it on our
on our website,
website.
yeah, that would be great. Okay. Um, okay, next question. Don't studies, sorry, I'm just trying to make sense of this. It's don't studies correlating audio slash noise and light, as these have immediate triggering symptoms and pain, including physiological symptoms. Are there any studies connecting with trauma, again, to light and noise for people with TBI?
That's a great question. We do recognize sound sensitivity as another symptom of concussion. It's not as frequent a symptom as light sensitivity, but it definitely is a persisting concussion symptom. By the way, I mentioned how many symptoms there can be in concussion, and the number is now about 85. Nobody that we've seen has all 85, but we do have, it's not infrequent for someone to have 10 or 12 symptoms after a concussion. And in fact, each of those symptoms may require slightly different treatment. But sound sensitivity and light sensitivity are often both present in the same person, and they have there's a different part of the brain that's affected with sound sensitivity.
Mhm. Okay. We have a comment from Matt, and Matt is an electrical engineer who's been managing post-concussive symptoms for over 10 years. But he's saying, note that for most digital displays, reducing the brightness can actually increase the flicker as the brightness is reduced by reducing the pulse width modulation of the power electronics, which drive the screen diodes.
I would say, Matt, you know more about engineering than I do.
Yeah, so that's good to know.
But that is interesting. I knew that alternating current is the reason why brightness, the brightness control is by somehow changing the current. Um, so I think that does make sense. What, but I'm not sure how that knowledge, other than what we have said, that if you do try a flicker-free screen, you might find that it's more helpful. I was hoping we'd have a more robust answer. We're having to do quite a bit of uh, mental and statistical gymnastics to show the difference between the flicker-free screen and the flickering screen in our last study that I alluded to. And part of the problem may be that we made an error in the test design. We had patients look at a very pleasant video. It was a Mad Mario, children's video that we decided had lots of color and lots of movement, and we thought for sure that that was going to be a good thing to test computer screen intolerance. But it turned out that people liked the video, so that the enjoyment factor seemed to override the aggravating factor of the movement and the color. So that was sort of an error in trial design. If we had it to do all over again, we would have a more engaging video. And also the other thing is, although when we did the reading from a screen, we asked questions afterwards, so people had to engage their brain uh, in what they were reading. Whereas when they were watching the video, they was just like watching television on a Saturday afternoon or something like that, and they enjoyed it too much. So yeah.
Okay. Next question. Are there any recommendations for how to adjust F dot lux?
You can play with it. There are a few different adjustments. They're not hard to do. Uh, the program is readily available and it's free, although there are some modifications of the program that they might charge for. there's some modifications, for example, that use the concept of your brain's monitor of the variations during the day, how the brain changes with the amount of light that's coming in. I'm not sure that there's evidence that that modification helps people with computer screen intolerance, but you could certainly try it. I don't know how much it is to sign up for the modification, but I certainly go for the regular F. Lux adjustment. It's completely free.
Great, thank you. My headaches get worse with watching computer screens until it's intolerable. Are the headaches causing the screen sensitivity or vice versa?
Well, that's really a good question because there's no doubt that the more symptoms that you have, the more aggravating things become. So for example, if you just have uh, eye strain and a feeling of discomfort in your eyes and a feeling of fatigue from the screen, you would have maybe last 10 minutes on the screen. But if you had a headache as well, if all of these symptoms produced a headache, or if they produced a headache and anxiety, or a headache, anxiety, and nausea, uh, or headache, anxiety, nausea, and vertigo. So, depending on how sensitive you are to light, that would determine, how long, how aggravating it was. So, and it's very variable from one person to another. And that's why some people can only tolerate a few minutes, and some people can tolerate 2 or 3 hours before they start to get symptoms. So there's a really wide range of tolerance or wide range of intolerance that people have once they've had a concussion.
Okay, great, thank you. Mike is asking, what percentage of people with post-concussive symptoms will improve yearly and be able to return to work?
You know what? I'm happy to say that in almost everybody, it gradually fades over time. Virtually everybody. We do have, some people, just like some people continue to have headaches for years and years and never had headaches before their concussion. It's the duration of symptoms is uh, very variable, but I'm happy to tell you that computer screen intolerance or CSI tends to fade early-ish in the spectrum of how long symptoms last. So it's generally in terms of months than in terms of years. So I think you can certainly be optimistic that it will fade, but that all of these aids that we have discovered will help it fade faster.
Great, thank you. Next question. Is there a list or published article that has best treatment recommendations for treating post-concussion symptoms that is supported by concussion specialists?
There probably are several in the last 3 or 4 years that are helpful for people with concussion. Now, that's another good idea. We probably should post those on our website. So you're giving us some homework. We haven't really posted, one of the great things is the number of really good centers that are focusing on concussion because it's so obvious that with so many people suffering from concussion, that better treatments are necessary and better articles are being published. So we will we'll take that under advisement and see if we can republish some of them on our
Mhm.
website. Yeah,
And
it's a good use of our website.
yeah, for sure. And I just posted, I'm hoping it came through to everyone. It's there's something called the Living Concussion Guidelines in Ontario. It's on concussionsontario.org. And they've got a patient version and a healthcare practitioner version, but it, again, just in terms of recommendations.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Leslie.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
absolutely true. The Ontario, what was called the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation guidelines are now, they've changed the name of it. Leslie, what do they call it now? The
The living
guidelines, the
living
living,
concussion guidelines. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It used to be, yeah, ONF.
We should put those on our website too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, Ellie's asking, it's interesting, is there any evidence to suggest that computer screen intolerance can be improved with exposure therapy? So I guess actually just
Uh,
sitting and
I,
torturing yourself.
I think not. I don't think there's any evidence that aggravating your brain will get you better faster. I think it's better to listen to your brain when it is aggravated. In other words, if you feel tired, you shouldn't deny yourself sleep. I think um, that it's better to give in and try to alter the symptoms with definite strategies that are have some evidence base to them. The problem is a lot of things that have been advocated by various people at various times have turned out not to be consistent and not to be evidence based. And I know how difficult it is for people who are suffering. You will sometimes resort to non evidence based treatments in the hope that you're going to be helped. But um, but it's better to not aggravate your brain and desist if you've tried the strategies that we talked about.
Okay. Um, what are your thoughts on FL41 tints for CSI or vision sensitivity?
Well, I think those are the blue light filtering glasses. I
Mm.
think that's what is known as blue light filtering glasses. Um, and I think there is evidence that they help.
What are your recommendations for people with computer sensitivity whose jobs involve mostly working on the computer?
Well, that's a great question, and that's why we're here tonight to try to uh, give you some strategies to deal with it. So, sunglasses, changing the fluorescent bulbs from white to yellowish, trying to work without fluorescent bulbs. Turn off the fluorescent lights if you can, and use ordinary incandescent bulbs. Are much easier on your eyes. Use f dot lux. You may have to do all of those things, and then you still may only be able to tolerate an hour or 2 hours, and then have to take a break. Um, we sympathize with you if your job is 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week sitting in front of a computer. But, so many workers nowadays are spending their entire workday in front of a computer. And the same with students. And during COVID, it was even, you know, the elementary school students who were in front of a computer all day long. So a lot of us are just um, you know, forced to do computer time.
Mhm.
But if you try all of these strategies that we've mentioned, I'm sure you'll find some that help. And as we said, you may have to double up on strategies. You may have to wear, some people wear two two different color sunglasses. They find that better. Or if you wear regular glasses, get the Elton John type glasses, which you can buy rather cheaply on the internet for about $25, and put them over your regular glasses. So doubling up on your glasses may help. You may look like an insect, but you will get back to work.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm just trying to, we've got a lot of questions. Um, I am 6 years in with daily headaches and computer screen intolerance. What would cause it to hang on for so long?
I wish we had the answer to that question. We do recognize, and that is why concussions are of increasing importance. And that's why people like me and the rest of our team are keen to work in the concussion field because we know how many people are suffering from continuing symptoms. So it's not just in the first few days or few weeks, it can last months or years. We know that. And we certainly sympathize with you. And there's still many unanswered questions, why it lasts so long. And sometimes, you know, it's very important, obviously, to prevent the next concussion because concussions are cumulative. That's another lesson that we've learned that you may recover very well from the first two or three or four, but not from number five. Um, Number five may last a long time. And the number that you can tolerate before they do last a long time varies enormously from person to person. Sometimes only one, but sometimes it's 10. We've had people with 10 or 12 concussions who get better. So there's a huge individual variation, and we don't know why.
Mhm. Thank you. I was told by my doctor that I should be active and play a sport or be on the treadmill or bike in order to get more blood flow to the brain. But these seem to make my concussion symptoms worse. Any suggestions?
Sure, that is a frequent issue. So you have to moderate the amount of physical activity that you do. So it may be moderating it in terms of intensity or in terms of duration. You may be able to tolerate 10 or 15 minutes at one level of exertion, but 30 minutes at another level of exertion, which is lower. So we want you to exercise, and we don't think it's blood flow that is the value of exercise. We actually think it's the chemicals that your brain produces. The modern theory is that the brain is not just an electrical relay station. That's what they taught me when I went to medical school, that it was, relay of information and reflexes, but it isn't just that. Your brain is a chemical factory producing a huge number of growth factors, for example. And we think that it's the growth factors that are exercise induced that help the brain get better from concussion. So the more you exercise, the more growth factors you produce. Your brain is producing growth factors even when you sleep, but not at as high a rate as is necessary to recover from something like concussion. So we recommend 30 minutes a day, 7 days a week of physical activity so that your brain produces more growth factors, not more blood flow. We don't think that's the reason nowadays. We did formerly, but we don't think that's the case now. But we are very impressed with the research done on the growth factors that the brain produces and how you can increase the rate of growth factor production by physical activity. But it shouldn't be physical activity that moves the brain inside the skull. It should be physical activity that does not cause the brain to move. So, in my view, running is not as good as fast walking. Elliptical trainer is terrific. That motion doesn't move the brain within the skull. Swimming, the backstroke or the side stroke are terrific. Swimming the breaststroke or the crawl are no good because the brain is moving inside the skull. So you have to be judicious in what physical activity you select to try to get your brain to recover, but it is one of the modern methods that has been discovered. And we have one of our at least one of our webinars on physical activity.
Yeah, I think that one is coming up soon. Sam asks, or he says, comments, great talk and research. Are computer screen problems helped with using a smaller screen and therefore less total light coming through? And is there benefit from using certain different fonts or larger fonts?
Absolutely. All of those strategies are good to limit the amount of light. And some people end up using, black background and white letters. They find that better tolerated. So that's if you're reading text, try back black background and white letters as a strategy to see if you can tolerate that better. Use in fact, if you can read uh, a text on an e-reader, then do it that way because there's very little light given off. In fact, a lot of the e-readers work on ambient light.
Great, thank you. There's been a number of questions in here that refer to this, and it's with regard to dealing with bright lights from oncoming cars, especially at night
Oh my
on the
goodness,
highway.
yeah, we really have to do something about the new halogen lights. It started with some car companies, I won't mention them, went into halogen lights first, and now everybody's doing it. They're particularly aggravating to people with this light sensitivity. Um, I find bright lights as I get older even more aggravating. In fact, I a confession to make. I love when I was younger sports cars, but I can't drive them anymore because the sports cars are low and everybody else's lights are higher. And so if you're driving a sports car, you get those bright lights right in your eyes. That's impossible. I can't drive one anymore. Those bright halogen lights are so aggravating to me. So I can appreciate after a concussion, they're going to be especially aggravating.
Okay, thank you. Catherine's asking, what are concussion doctors? She's wondering, are concussion doctors, are they a particular discipline? And if so, how to find one? She's been suffering for 2 years, so she hasn't left home for months and has been turned down in a concussion department. So she's wondering where to go for help.
Well, that's a great question. And nowadays, concussion doctors are self proclaimed. It hasn't yet become a specialty under the supervision of, let's say, the Royal College or the family practice associations. And it's if you are experienced in neurology, for example, then you have the training to be a concussion doctor. Most of the ones that we interact with are neurologists, but there are neurosurgeons like myself who know about concussion. There are lots of physical medicine and rehabilitation doctors who call themselves concussion specialists. Absolutely appropriate uh, for rehabilitation doctors to feel that they can call themselves concussion doctors. But, medical schools are not turning out concussion doctors the way they're turning out, um, pediatricians, for example. So it's it is it is a problem, and in fact, some of our group has studied this problem of concussion pathways that people have to follow, and I know how frustrating it can be to get to the right one, but try through your family doctor. Generally, the family doctors are aware of who knows what in concussion and are still the mainstay of being referred to the right person. And I would like to stress that it's often not just one doctor working in isolation who can manage concussion problems. That on our roster, for example, in our concussion center, we have probably 15 different disciplines that interact to be able to help people with concussion. People like Dr. Rattan, who's a neuropsychologist, is part and parcel of the concussion team. We have psychiatrists who are skilled in managing anxiety and depression that are part of concussion. PTSD is part of concussion. Um, Exercise experts are part of concussion. So we'll have physiotherapists, occupation. We've mentioned the importance of occupational therapists. Social workers can play an important role in managing a lot of concussion problems. So it, by its very nature, the fact that, I mentioned we're up to about 85 symptoms of concussion indicates why a multidisciplinary team is often required. Not for everybody, but certainly for some people with concussion.
Great. I know we are a little bit over time. Can we maybe get in two more questions? I know you said you could,
Sure.
you've got lots. Okay, we have a question from someone, and they're asking about whether there's any involvement, I guess, with yourself or through the Canadian Concussion Center with Bill C-277, an act to establish a national strategy on brain injuries. And they're saying more about the bill can be found on the Brain Injury Canada website, with the goal of raising awareness. And this kind of information is important for the public, healthcare, and employers, as many employers dismiss brain injury due to a lack of education and aren't willing to make accommodations and so forth.
Well, we love Bill 277 or C-277 because it does bring out the importance of concussion, for example. It's part and parcel of what might, be required. I don't think there has been enough emphasis on the brain. Uh, there are so many brain conditions, and as we live longer, there are a lot of brain conditions that develop as we get older the younger brain is much better able to tolerate things, and the older brain is subject to so many additional problems of the brain. Um, so I think there hasn't been enough emphasis on the brain, and this bill is designed to try to improve the situation. And the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and the oil being money. There's no question that funding of concussion research has been meager uh, in our country, and there's a chance, for example, that I mentioned earlier that the Canadian Concussion Network, which is a great idea, I'm part of it, um, might go down the drain if it's not refunded. The Canadian Institutes of Health Research have decided to terminate funding, and that's not a good thing. So we're all fighting against that. So, the more attention to that bill, the better off the brain will be. Your brain and my brain.
Mhm. For sure. Thank you. Maybe just one more. Have you found, are there any effective medications for reducing light-induced headaches?
Not a single one that I'm aware of that's specific for that. Now, headaches in general, which are the topic of one of our webinars, have been tremendously helped. I would say one of the best, you know, symptoms to deal with nowadays is headaches. And even in the last year or two, new therapies have come online for headaches, including post-concussion headaches. And there's a reason for needing a neurologist, for example, where one specialty has sort of taken the lead in being the best group to go to for headache management. I don't mean, one headache a year, you need a concussion neurologist specialist. But if you're having daily headaches or even, 3 times a week headaches, you should see a neurologist because they're the ones who have the armamentarium. Like, who would have ever thought that Botox was going to be effective for migraine headaches? And I didn't mention that a lot of people with post concussion headaches have many features of migraine headaches. There's lots of overlap between concussion headaches and migraine headaches. Some of the drugs that work for migraine work for concussion headaches. And in fact, that's one of our big items in concussion care that we have really improved the management of concussion headaches.
That's great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think I better cut it off there. Thank you, Dr. Tatter, and thank you for everyone that attended tonight. As we always do, you're going to be getting a very brief survey, and we always appreciate any feedback or suggestions that you might have. We also ask in there if there were any questions that you didn't get answered. I know there were a few. I apologize that we didn't get to. You can put them into the survey if you'd like. Just to let you know that surveys are anonymous. So if you want someone to get back to you, just include your email address along with the question. And just to let you know, our next session is Tuesday, October the 8th, and we've got Dr. Mark Bailey, who's a physiatrist at Toronto Rehab, and he's going to be presenting on exercise therapy in concussion. So thank you very much, and hope you all have a great evening.